Hello. This is my video Tehillim for today, part 2. It's Tehillim, this is my video Tanya for today, part 2, day 52 of my video Tanya. Hine al ze amru b'makom she'ata motze gedulato shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu sham ata motze an v'tan nuto. Concerning this disparity between human intelligence and divine wisdom, our sages have said, where you find the greatness of the Holy One, blessed be He, there you will find humility, i.e., how can we approach God's greatness to find it and be united with it through His humility, by His lowering Himself to our level. V'tzimtzem HaKadosh Baruch Hu Ritzono v'chachmato b'taryag mitzvot HaTorah b'hil chotehen. God compressed His will and wisdom in the 613 commandments of the Torah and in their laws. All mentioned above, by the logic of the law, represents divine wisdom and ruling divine will. Uve tserufe otiot Torah, neviim ketuvim, and in the letter combinations of Scripture, Torah, Nevi'im, and Ketuvim, the very letters and words of Scripture contain God's will and wisdom. Wherefore, even one who is ignorant of their meanings fulfills the precept of Torah study by merely reciting them. Udrasho tehem Agadot umidrashe chacha menu zichronam livracha. And God's will and wisdom are also contained in the exposition of these verses found in the Agadot and Midrashim of our sages of blessed memory. Bichdei Shekol haneshama o ruach v'nefesh shebaguf ha'adam tuchal lehasigan b'data. In all these did God compress His will and wisdom in order that every neshama, or even the lower soul levels of ruach and nefesh, situated as they are in the human body, will be able to grasp them with its intellect. Uli kayaman kol ma she'efshar lekayim mehen b'mase dibor machashava, and in order that it, the nefesh, or ruach, or neshama, fulfill them as far as they can be fulfilled. Ve'al yedei zeh titlabesh b'chol eser b'chino teha b'shlosha levushim elu, thereby clothing itself with all its 10 faculties in these 3 garments of thought, speech, and action of Torah and mitzvot. V'lachein nim shala ha-Torah l'mayim ma mayim yardim mimakom avoha lamakom namuch. Therefore the Torah has been compared to water, for just as water descends from a higher level to a lower level, the water which reaches the lower level is the same water that left its source within the higher level, unlike light, for example, which also travels from its source, but in whose case it's not the source. The luminous body itself that is transmitted, but only a ray of it. And unlike intellect, which can also be communicated from one person to another, but in whose case too, it is not the source, the teacher's mind, itself that transmits itself to the lower level, the student's mind, but only the idea, a product of the source. Kach HaTorah yarda mimakom kvoda, just as we find in the analogy of water, so has Torah descended from its place of glory, i.e. the lofty spiritual plane, which is its source. Shehi ritzono v'chachmato yitbarech v'raita v'kedusha v'kudsha brichu kula chad v'leit machashava tefisa veit klal. Veikla. In its original state, it is God's will and wisdom, and Torah is one and the same with God, whom no thought can apprehend at all. On that plane, Torah is incomprehensible to man, as is God himself. Umisham nasa v'yarda Beseter hamadregot mi madrega lemadrega bihishtalshalut ha'olamot. From there, the Torah has journeyed in a descent through hidden stages, stage after stage, in the shtalshalut of the worlds, i.e. the chain-like order of interconnected spiritual worlds, explained more fully in chapter 2. Chapter descended through all these levels. Ad shenit labsha bidvarim gashmim vi in yinei olam hazeh shehein rov mitzvot haTorah kechulam vihil chotehem, until it clothed itself in material matters and things of this corporal world, which comprise nearly all the Torah's commandments and their laws. Nearly all the mitzvot involve material objects. Tzitzit are made of wool, tefillin of leather, and so on. Even the spiritual mitzvot involve material objects in their halachot. The laws governing their practical application, for example, the mitzvah of loving one's fellow, although essentially a spiritual mitzvah as it consists of an emotion. Love demands that one aid and his fellow Jew materially, financially, etc. These being concrete material expressions of a spiritual mitzvah. Uve serufe otiot gashmiot bidyo al hasefer esrim ve'arba'a sefarim she b'Torah neviim uchtuvim. Thus, the Torah clothed itself in the material objects with which the mitzvot are performed, and also in the physical letter combinations written with ink in a book, namely the 24 books of Torah, Nevi'im and Ketuvim. As mentioned above, the letters and words contain the holiness of God's will and wisdom. Kedei shetehei kol machashava tefisa bahen va'afilu b'china dibur ma'aseh shel mata mimadregat machashava tefisa bahen umit labeshet bahen. Torah underwent this great descent so that every human thought be able to grasp them and so that even speech and action, which are on a level lower than thought, be able to grasp them, God's will and wisdom, and clothe themselves in them by performing the commandments in speech and action. This is the end of part 2 of my video, YouTube Tanya, day 52. Goodbye.